Charlotte Stevens received the invitation on a cold October morning, a crisp envelope addressed in old-fashioned handwriting. The return address, Westlake Manor, made her hands tremble. She hadn't thought about that place in years, not since the last summer she spent there as a child. Something had happened at Westlake, something she'd locked deep inside her mind. Still, when Margaret Westlake, the manor's matriarch, invited her for a weekend gathering, curiosity, or a buried sense of duty, overcame her unease. Charlotte packed her bags, hoping to find some closure. Yet, as she drove through the winding countryside roads toward the manor, the knot in her stomach tightened. Westlake Manor looked almost exactly as it had all those years ago, majestic yet foreboding, looming over the lake that stretched out like a dark mirror. As she arrived, Margaret greeted her warmly, though her once fiery red hair had turned a ghostly silver. "My dear Charlotte, it's been too long," Margaret said, but Charlotte couldn't shake the cold feeling creeping over her, especially when her eyes fell upon the still waters of the lake. As a child, she had loved swimming there, but now it seemed to pulse with a menacing presence, the memories of her last summer swirling uneasily at the edges of her consciousness. That evening, Margaret brought Charlotte out onto the veranda overlooking the lake. The elder woman's voice had a soft, almost mournful tone. "Do you remember that last summer, Charlotte?" Margaret asked, staring into the water's depths. Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. "Of course," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. The truth was, she did remember, but only fragments. She remembered swimming in the lake, going farther out than anyone else dared, feeling something cold brush against her legs beneath the surface. She had told herself it was just a fish, but deep down, she had always known there was something more. And she had never told anyone. The memory haunted her that night as she lay awake in her guest room. The lake seemed to call to her, pulling at her mind, demanding her attention. Charlotte got up, staring out of the window at the moonlit water. She could almost feel the weight of the water around her legs again, dragging her down into the darkness. A knock at the door startled her. Margaret stood in the hallway, her face drawn and pale. "I need to tell you something about the lake," she said, stepping inside. Charlotte's chest tightened as Margaret spoke. "There's something in that lake, Charlotte. Something old. Has been here for centuries. It calls to people, draws them in." Margaret's voice trembled as she explained the lake's dark secret. Over the years, people had vanished, pulled into the depths by an unseen force. "I've seen it happen before. But it didn't take you that night because I believe it's waiting for something. Something connected to you." Charlotte's blood ran cold as the memories she had tried so hard to suppress came flooding back. She remembered that night as a child when she had swum too far, felt something seize her beneath the water, and blacked out. She had never understood how she had escaped. But now she realized that the lake hadn't spared her. It had marked her. All these years, it had been waiting for her to return. And now, standing by the window, staring out at the black, still water, Charlotte understood why the lake called to her so strongly. Margaret insisted that Charlotte would have to face the lake, confront whatever was inside. "If you don't, it will only grow stronger," she warned. But the thought of going back into that water filled Charlotte with a terror she hadn't felt since that night. It wasn't just the fear of the unknown lurking beneath the surface. It was the fear of being helpless, the fear of losing control. The next night, unable to sleep, Charlotte felt an irresistible pull toward the lake. The air outside was frigid, and the wind howled through the trees as if warning her to turn back, but she couldn't stop. She walked down the dock, the moonlight casting long shadows across the water's surface. The lake was unnaturally calm, its surface smooth like glass, but beneath that calm was a dark, terrifying force. She felt it drawing her closer, felt the cold tug in her bones, pulling her back to where it all began. With each step, the memories of that night years ago became clearer. She had gone swimming alone, far out into the center of the lake. Something had wrapped around her legs, pulling her under. She had panicked, struggled, and then everything had gone black. And now, as she stood at the end of the dock, she knew the lake wanted her back. Her feet slipped into the water, and she gasped as the freezing cold enveloped her skin. She could feel it again, the same presence she had felt before, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to claim her. Without thinking, she took another step forward, then another, until the water reached her knees. Her breath came in ragged gasps as the memories swarmed her mind, and the fear took hold. "Come," a voice whispered inside her mind. Her heart raced, but she couldn't move, couldn't stop herself. She took another step, her feet sinking into the cold, murky water. Suddenly, she slipped, and before she could catch herself, she plunged into the lake. The icy water closed over her head, stealing the breath from her lungs. She thrashed, desperate to reach the surface, but something wrapped around her legs, pulling her deeper into the abyss. The coldness seeped into her bones, and her panic grew as she struggled to break free. But then, just as she was about to give in to the terror, something changed. The panic ebbed, replaced by a strange calm. The water wasn't terrifying anymore. It was peaceful. The pull wasn't something to be fought. It was part of her, as natural as breathing. A shape began to emerge in the depths, rising toward her. A pale, ghostly face with long, flowing hair. It was a woman. No, it was her. The reflection in the water wasn't just her reflection. It was her. A ghostly, twisted version of herself, staring back with hollow eyes. Charlotte's heart stopped as she realized the truth. The lake hadn't just marked her. It was part of her. The dark force beneath the water had been inside her all along, waiting to claim her. And now, it had come to take what was owed. The ghostly figure reached out, its cold fingers brushing against Charlotte's cheek, and in that moment, a flood of memories overwhelmed her. She saw herself as a child, felt the pull of the lake even then, saw the faces of others who had been claimed by the darkness beneath the surface. The lake wasn't just taking lives, it was collecting them, transforming them, merging them with itself. And Charlotte was next. But the fear was gone now. In its place was a strange acceptance. She had always been part of the lake. It had always been part of her. The pull was irresistible, and she no longer wanted to resist. "Embrace it," the voice whispered. And Charlotte did. Let go. She stopped struggling, stopped fighting, and allowed herself to sink deeper into the darkness. The water enveloped her, and she became one with the lake. Hours later, Margaret stood at the edge of the dock, staring out over the water. The storm had passed, leaving the lake eerily calm beneath the overcast sky. She had known this day would come, but still, she felt a pang of sorrow. Charlotte had been special, different from the others. She had always known the lake wanted her. And now, it had finally claimed her. For a moment, the surface of the lake rippled, and Margaret saw a pale figure rise from the water. Just for an instant. Charlotte's face but changed. Ghostly, hollow, part of the lake now. And then the figure was gone, sinking back into the depths. The lake was still once more. Margaret turned and walked back toward the manor, her heart heavy. The lake had taken what it wanted, and it would wait again,